at the Save Ancient Study Alliance. I have 2 higher degrees in basically classics, Greek and Roman history and philology. And my talk yesterday was about the language and how it helps build the world in Heaven's Vault, which is one of my absolute favorite games. I am an absolute language nerd. I love them to death. I have taken several dead languages, even from somebody who helped build this conference. Shout out to Megan at Digi Hammurabi. And Heaven's Vault is a game where you play an archaeologist in a world without historians, trying to learn about the past with only the material culture and the writing to guide you. So we're going to get into that, and I will be commenting along the way. I will be able to see your chat, so feel free to chime in, ask questions. If you want to come up and into the Q&A line and ask verbally, I'm chill with that. And I think we are ready to go, so I'm going to switch off my face and just put on the game. Please enjoy. So our game starts with a quote from a hymn by Enheduanna, one of our lovely writers from the ancient world, from the real world. Enheduanna was a priestess. She was Sumerian, right? Oh gosh, now I'm getting her mixed up. But there are people here who know more about Enheduanna than I do. But she was one of the first authors that we have anything from, female or otherwise. Here we have high-lying Kesh in all heaven and earth, you are the form-shaping place, spreading fear like a great poisonous snake. From the hymn to the Kesh temple of Ninhursag. Just to set the mood for the game. The gods are powerful, but not always gracious. So I have played this save a couple times before, so we are going to be seeing some more advanced language here. Every time that you play on a save of Heaven's Vault, you get more of the language. So that's one thing that's very cool. Also, there are certain events and conversations that happen only sometimes. So each playthrough is very slightly different, and you never know quite what you're going to see. Here they say that. I hope you can hear the audio okay. Most of the game is visual, but there are occasional interludes from our protagonist, Aaliyah, who is a nice, normal person who has just climbed a hill and is therefore out of breath. I love that for us. So we are Aaliyah Alaustra, a native to a moon called Elbereth. You can't hear when she's speaking. So she did have a little bit of an opening statement, and it was more or less, the past is always with us. There's always a spark, something that brings the past into the present. So we are Leah. I am controlling her. Our companion is a robot that we call Six, who has been assigned to us by our grad advisor, and reports back to that grad advisor, by the way. We are on a desert planet. which is clearly not always been so, or has not always been unimportant. You always start the game here, which is a foretaste of the things to come. Bricked up opening, so there is something here. To keep people out or to keep something in? There is something written here. I'll click on that in just a moment, but I just want you to notice that we do already get in the architecture, in the sculpture, we are already getting pieces of the style of the most ancient people in the nebula. We have this almost adobe-looking building on this desert planet with the wooden support struts at the top you can kind of see, and the decoration is minimal, but it's been here for thousands of years and it's held up. We do have those colored lines and dots, and then the stone monumental statuary. Doesn't match the bricks at all, does it? Bricks were clearly put in later. 6 words, but only 2 are clear. And there they are, our first words in ancient. That's going to get us our credits scene. Now, since I've played this game before, minor spoiler, that is the translation of the name of the game, Heaven's Vaults. Okay, so now we really get into the main gameplay. We are on Iox at the university. Kate was telling us yesterday. So she just said, my story begins on Iox. That was where I met the robot. But Kate was telling us yesterday that Monica Hanna, on whom the character of Aaliyah is based, found this setting incredibly familiar from her time in Egyptian universities. So this is our first meeting with this robot. Let's ask if our advisor's in a good mood. Been away for a while now. Forgotten how cold the air on Iox is. The robot very clearly doesn't know much about other moons. We get our introduction to the robot's ethical core, and Alan, I'm going to answer you in a minute once we're done with this conversation. So, Aaliyah has a reputation for losing robots. What a hilarious suggestion. The professor's urgency was remarkable. Maybe we should keep her waiting. Don't want her making a habit of impatience. So Aaliyah and her advisor don't have the most friendly relationship, and quite honestly, that tracks with my experience. So she looks like a tiger in a cage. This is interesting because how does she know what a tiger is? Starting out with a not very nice introduction to 6. Let's talk about this tree, the tree of knowledge. Each branch grows more branches. Except for the ones that die, fall off, and are forgotten, which is where we come in, I suppose. Went outside the university grounds exploring. It's a beautiful moon. You can tell it was once lush and fertile. Must have been huge forests, lakes, rivers, but they're all dry now. Remember, water is value. Suppose they cut all of the trees down to make chairs or ships. Okay, so Alan was wondering whether the vocabulary is variable depending on your interpretive choices or whether there's one right defined vocabulary underlying the language. This is actually kind of interesting if you look into interviews with the developer. There is one right interpretation of the language. You don't always get there immediately, unlike something like Chants of Sonar where you get a very quick confirmation with the journal. Here you can kind of go through iterations, but you do get confirmations that are correct. That was big air quotes, you couldn't see them. So um, it, I get the impression that the original language was developed to be a little bit looser and a little bit more open into interpretation. And they definitely had way more elaborate puzzles of figuring it out, but that it was too difficult as gameplay, and so they had to tone it down. Oh, let's ask about the ethical core. What good is it? Obviously, it was what stops me pushing humans off cliffs, Elberethian. Is that something you want to do? It was simply an example. Were it to be convenient for me to do so, my core would prevent me. Well, can't say that we're not getting as good as we give. I was 15 when Mayari rescued me from the slums of Elbereth and brought me here, she says. How reliable is your core? It is the core of my being. If it goes, I go. I wonder how true that is for humans. I still don't know why she did it, Aaliyah says. Oh, in many ways, even though this relationship is not the most friendly, it is still maternal and mentor-like. So here we get our first introduction to Janiki Renba, who is going to be a fascinating part of this story. So there are markings, and this is how we get a lot of our language interaction. There will be artifacts that have ancient writing on them. We'll find occasional books. Most of them we don't get to read all of for one reason or another, but there is one we read all the way through, which is very interesting. And so the way that this works is you have a set of words that are in your pre-established vocabulary. And mine is rather large because I've played this 2 times on this save already. And so these are distinct words that we know. But as you can see up here, we have the full inscription, and it, as with many ancient languages, has no spaces, has no punctuation. We can only understand what individual words are by understanding what it is we're looking at. So I happen to know that this is Holy Emperor, and then we have something interesting here. We have something that we definitely do not have, so I'm just going to use something to move us around up here. So we have a verbal sign, a glyph that kind of means land or mountain or earth, a connector, another verbal sign, something that, we have guide here that kind of looks like this bit. So that's sort of a speaking, and then a connector, an object, motion. So we don't know what all of this is together, but we could choose to put in guide even knowing that that's not the full word. And she'll tell us that that's wrong if we do. Now after that we get something more recognizable. This is a possessive that we have seen often, so we can put that in. And the verb love. So if you can break a sentence down into those words, and you'll notice that you have one word left. And this is how you get to find new words and make new interpretations. So so we can, knowing that we have essentially verb, land, guide, we know that we are not looking at something like blind or blindly. That would be an adjective or an adverb. We know that we're not looking for a noun like rule, although it could be the verb to rule. It could be commands or illuminates. Probably not illuminates. There's no light here. But rules or commands. I'm going to go with commands. The Holy Emperor commands your love, but I'm only guessing. Let's ask about Remba. That's cute. Okay, Remba has disappeared. So that's what we do. We find things, not people, though. So he has nothing to communicate with, no robot. Not everyone is required to travel with a robot. I wonder what happens if I tell her to find someone else. Your ruins will wait, she says. Come back when you know where he is. That's a dismissal. Let's find out about this Wong guy. So, Mayari is convinced that Huang is in love with us. She might not be wrong. I have reason to think otherwise. But the robot longs to see the stars. That's pretty interesting in and of itself. It's wonderful to be accompanying you. Really? Really, is it? Humans are fascinating, and I am different. Here we get the name 6. Where did they find you, 6? So the robots have been buried in concrete in the old buildings here. That alone tells us a lot about the history, I think. We occur, I am told, like potatoes. I think not. Someone put you there. Get an introduction to the robot's lack of previous memory. We can look at that sculpture, that aesthetic. Very similar to what Mayari has on her desk. So there's some ethical questions right at the beginning. There are starving people on Elbereth, and we as an archaeologist, what are we doing versus what are they doing here on Iox where there is water? The curator of the university doesn't believe in history. You should devote yourself to a real science like loop philosophy. Evidence and theory. I do quite enjoy Aaliyah's relationship with the university and the people who don't believe in her work. Oh, the Great Loop. The robot has observed that humans do not find humans have a difficult time with contradictions. You dislike robots and rely on them. You are interested in history but ignore your own. You're interested in people, yet you prefer to be alone. Isn't everyone like that, though? That's what he was saying. What do you know about the Loop Temple? This is pretty interesting. Loop priests claim that life is a great cycle. They believe that all that has happened has literally happened before. Yes, literally. The probability is incalculable. There is no meaningful data, but as Six observed before, there is, it goes against all observations about time and entropy. So, what is Wang doing? He's reading. Why is he here doing it instead of in the library? Well, maybe he knows something about Remba. So this is how the game mostly goes. You get choices of dialogue and of interactions. You can walk around. I find Wang unobjectionable. He's a nice scholarly boy. Archaeology isn't important to everybody. Certifiable soft boy, yes. Wang is basically our fellow graduate student, the only one we really get to talk to. What are you reading? Elasra claims, oh, we've gotten a change. It's not the Chronicles of Mazwai this time through, it's the Chronicles of Elasra. Stories change how we think. Tell me a story then. How do we think? So Aaliyah kind of zones out there. She says his mouth was moving, but and old stories are fascinating, but Wang has a way of telling them. Let's ask about Mercy. Oh, I don't know what happens if I show him the brooch. That'll be interesting. Can you tell me anything about it? So he is very text-based, a philologist, if you will. Eagle and sun. Older representations have more naturalistic birds, so this is old. It must have belonged to someone important. So sure, let's have a line from the book. So we've got, this one is broken up into spaces for us, probably because it is in a textual copy rather than on an artifact. And we have two unknown words, both of which are pretty chunky. So we have verb, that's a past tense marker. I think that's the ear for listening. I don't have my partner actually went through and wrote down all the individual glyphs, but I don't have it in front of me. um, so that's a connector, and then a verb, concrete noun, separation, connector, concrete noun, person. So we're looking for a past tense verb, so not soldier. Um, we've got separation. So probably not linked. We'd want a negation for that, and we don't have one here. Probably not closed either. So so here we've got an abstract noun marker and then a connector, an adjective or adverb marker. There's the little negation, which is helpfully made into an X so that we can recognize it. One thing that I like about these glyphs is that a lot of them you can kind of see the shape that they were coming from. Like person, you can see like it has a head and two legs, right? I like that. And you can kind of see that the glyph for life, which is in the middle of the next section, has both fire and water in it, and it's cute. But like that almost never comes up. Also, you can see above, I hadn't mentioned, but you can see words that might be related here. So we had the word earlier, the verb love, and you can see that that's the last part of this word. So we're looking glyph-wise for something that is an abstract noun that has something to do with the feeling of love, or the action of love, I should say, and a negation somewhere in there. So we know it's not going to be a head, right? That's not an abstract noun. Giver and luxury both are more concrete, but cruelty as a negation of love, I think that makes perfect sense. And just to verify that, we can look at the rest of this thing, of the statement, and see all suffered blank of robots. All suffered the cruelty of robots makes perfect sense as a thing to say. Quite a monster of a line, isn't it? I thought there weren't any robots in the Empire. Suggests otherwise. Well, the annals won't read themselves. Yeah, let's get out of here. So here we have another really cool piece of this game, the timeline. And I want to take a look at it because we get all sorts of very particular details. It's not just telling us the timeline of the universe, but of our own playthrough. So as we go back, it gets to bigger and bigger portions of the timeline, all the way back out to 4,500 years ago. The Holy Empire was about 1,000 years ago, and the robots might have been buried around that time, because there were theoretically no robots in the Empire. And then we have the Chronicles of Alasra were supposedly written during the Empire. Lasra was an ancient writer who documented the effects of a loop across the nebula. On your first playthrough, this will definitely be the Chronicles of Mazwai, not Elasra. The brooch does seem to be a relic of that empire. Now, Eagle and Sun, I just want to point out again that there might be eagles somewhere among the moons, but we're in a nebula. There is no sun. So why do they have an idea of a sun? That tells us a lot about the history that they can't have started here in the nebula. We know a bit about the history of Iox, the universities established, and then back to our own lifetime. Robots on Iox were buried in the walls. Some can still be heard. They're awake in there, some of them. We also have here a list of all of the inscriptions that we've seen along a timeline of when we got them. And we can look at solved versus unsolved versus solvable. So that's really fun design. I think it really kind of gets you into the mindset of thinking about the ancient past and about our relationship to the past to be able to say, you know, like we're looking at a timeline of about 4,000 years, right? Total. That's what there is. And you know, we're looking also at when we saw particular things, when we learn particular words, and whether that helps us with things that we've been looking at. So here's our map of the galaxy, or sorry, not galaxy, nebula. All of these blue lines are rivers. The dots are destinations. So this map being most of the way filled out is, again, an artifact of this not being my first playthrough. You start out with much less, but we have our choice. We can travel to Mercy. We could travel to Aaliyah's home of Elbereth. And we also have Renaka, a market moon. Those of you who know a little bit about Arabic might notice that I am using some particularly Arabic pronunciations, you know, Renaka rather than Renaki. That is borne out by the few times that we hear Aaliyah speak aloud. There's a drink called Raka, spelled R-A-K-I, or R-A-Q-I, I think. And you notice that she's wearing a headscarf, the name Aaliyah, a lot of nods at the Arabic of the person that this is based on. And when we go to Elbereth, you can see some design features that line up with that as well. Oh. Okay, is it not going to let me sail for some reason? Ah, right. It has to put us aboard the ship. Yeah, just like Arak. I think that's deliberate. So we have our ship named the Nightingale, and it is a ship in many ways. Don't see why Mayari can't go herself. I'm an archaeologist, not a search dog. But Mayari considers herself important, and as a grad student, I am not. We do have several ways that we can play Aaliyah. We can be an Ioxian sympathizer. We can be very antagonistic. We could choose what kind of relationship we want to build with Six. Okay, there we are. Now it's going to let us sail. I personally love the fact that you actually get to sail the rivers, and I want to give you a look at this ship because I think it's very cool. You cannot crash in this game. You cannot sail off the rivers. Nothing bad can happen to you except you can get lost, but that's what the map is for. Mayari wanted us to sail to Maersi. It's a short sail through fast waters. So here we have sailing. And as you can see, well, maybe we don't have enough visual information to see from here. You'll see eventually that we are actually in a wooden boat with some rudders, but our sail goes down into the water. And the whole nebula is like this, with rivers flowing through space and over rocks and into each other, through great clouds. Sometimes there are rapids. And primarily what sailing the rivers consists of is knowing when and how to turn the boat. But you can learn a lot about how the nebula works from sailing too, because of course we have things like the name the Verdant Pass, where these green clouds are, verdant being a word for green, although usually implying growth as well. Here's a little bit about the ship. Found the Nightingale in a ruined hall on Elbereth, covered in dust. She must have been someone's prized possession once. She's mine now. And here we are at Maersi. You can see the greenery from here. So verdant it is. We've already gotten some intimations that people rarely go sailing. Stepped out of the ship and into the muck, she says. Mud covered the ground and rock. And everywhere I looked, things were growing from the mud. And some of those things had legs. Hi, Piggo. The robot pointing out that they cannot breathe, as you are no doubt aware. Point being that this place is full of water. So Aaliyah starting out very cynical. Where do we start? She says there's a series of rice terraces. If we climb up away from the water, it should take us to the main village. But let's start not with people, but with this statue. The air smelled earthy and sweet, she says. Would you recognize Renba if we saw him? Yes, says 6. That is probably why my Arya assigned 6 in particular. Look at this statue. She towers over everything. Elbereth has a statue like that of a sort, but it's just a pair of feet. Iox must approve, although I understood they had destroyed statues on similar moons. The destruction of artifacts. Ha, ha. Robot's not a scent hound either. No. 6 is good and sarcastic. But the destruction of historical artifacts and writing is very common in societies that want to take a lot of control. Colonizers and fascists all want to destroy knowledge of the past and knowledge that you can change the future. It's quite old. And we have a line of text, my favorite. Not much, but some. Holy water goddess. Now, in ancient, the word God is not gendered, so that is Aaliyah interpreting. There is a difference between what's written and what's said. Certainly plenty of water here. Guarding their most precious resource. So, if you remember from the opening scene, this statue is very similarly styled to that one, but that one was a more masculine or at most androgynous figure reaching skyward. Here we have a very rounded feminine figure, a fertility goddess, a water goddess. Then there is something hidden behind the statue. A shard of crystal. Not from here, but same mineral as in that brooch we found, or were given. Not a very valuable crystal. And the shard and the brooch are enough to find him? Maybe. Yeah. Let's look around some more. So, a difference between ancient and modern construction. The ancient construction here, we have a stone monumental statue. The modern is all wood. There's a lot of question here about what to do with artifacts, what is ethical to do with artifacts, whether you sell them for money, put them in a museum, use them for more practical purposes, like finding missing roboticists. There's an emblem of Iox here, so this is a collection shed. Janiki is not here. It's a big tithe barn. This moon produces a surplus for what good it does them. A genuine forest. She has mentioned that Elbereth is dry and Iox only has the one tree left. Now that would have been interesting. Robots cannot swim. But what is strong enough? What is a laughable substance to build floors? Can be chewed apart by mice, so can wires. So we have a mention of the accessibility of places. Robots run on treads and are heavy. Humans, not so much. So, what's he like, Renba? Couldn't judge. Interview was largely technical, mostly ensuring my vision was in line with his expectations of gravity. What is a wellspring? How does it work? Evidently, it is a source. It has no mechanism, as I understand it. The questions of fundamental nature of the world that are not being asked because history is not to be interrogated. A wellspring of air. Clearly we're not dealing with a well as you and I know it. Sorry if I startled you. Wasn't crying? Don't tell them I was crying. Are you in trouble? You're from Ajax? Let's not answer that. It's complicated. I'm not her, not Miari. I'm not Miari. Sorry. Should have said nothing. Oh. Didn't realize we could lose that one. So the robot was listening. It seems someone from Ajax has been here. That was a contradictory statement, 6. Ooh, a gleam in the grass. Maybe we found something. Bye, Alan. Thanks for coming. Found a key. Been here a long time. Revealed by the irrigations. There's nothing carved. Still, it's ancient. Points us to probably where that brooch was found. How she came to that conclusion, I'm not sure, but often it seems that it is stylized. Oh. In this way, 6 is very useful. So you are interested in the history of trivial inanimate objects. Yes. Cute. So let's see. I know we're coming up on the end of this time slot and people will need to go for dinner, including me. But university cares for your well-being. I don't think they do. Well, Mayari certainly does to some extent, but... Hello? So we're getting the start of those class differences that I mentioned. And not all of it is friendly. What a shock. But I think we can talk to him some more. Come on, talk to me. Maybe if we make it to the well. Three paths met at the heart of the village. Could imagine them all sitting around here in the evenings, telling stories and singing. Seems so nice. Let's see if we can get anything out of him. You're an ancient and noble moon. Keep it to remind you of that fact. He really hates us. Your husband gone wandering. Oh boy. Aaliyah is a little bit naive. Okay. So here we get the true story. All right. I think that's all we're going to get for today. And a good moment for me to stop. If anybody has questions or comments that they want to make, you can definitely follow up with me on Blue Sky or on Mastodon. And if you would like to see more of me playing through this game with my partner accompanying me, you can watch the full playthrough, which is recorded on my YouTube channel, Zilla's Athenaeum. So thank you all so much, and I hope you have a lovely evening. And please do go participate in the evening sessions. They sound like great fun.